Hey, good evening. I'm Vera Stewart and welcome to the VeryVera Show. You know, pies are some of my absolute favorite things to make. And you know, we get away from thinking about dessert sometimes, and believe it or not, dessert is one of the most favorite parts of the meal to me. So tonight I've pulled together my favorite ingredients and I'm going to do two recipes. One is a peanut butter chocolate pie that is absolutely delicious, a little bit different maybe than the one that you're accustomed to making. And then a pecan pie that has bourbon and molasses. It is just spectacular. So tune in tonight, get that rolling pin out instead of knocking your husband in the head with it. We're going to actually use it tonight. So join me, we're going to put together these two pies and you're going to see how dessert can be the star of the show. So join me back in just a few minutes. Welcome back. You know, I love to make pies, and I want to help each of you understand that it's really not that hard to do. You know, I think we're intimidated sometimes by pie crust and, you know, whether or not we make it or we buy it at the store. So what I'm trying to hopefully encourage each of you to do is to understand that wouldn't it be great to be able to say that you made the entire dish from the crust all the way through to the topping that goes with it. It's very simple, and I've kind of added a little special twist to this tonight. So the pie crust for the pecan pie, I've got flour and confectioner's sugar and a little bit of kosher salt in the bowl. And then what I've done is I took 7 tablespoons of unsalted butter and basically just cut it into little strips, and then I've individually cut each of those into little blocks. And I've kept this in the refrigerator until just before we were ready to start just now, so it would stay good and cold. So I know you've read in recipes before for this that you're supposed to get it blended until it looks like coarse meal. And of course, when I was taking home ec in high school, we always had the pastry blender. But you can do this easily with 2 knives. And all you're doing really is just incorporating the butter into the flour. Or another way that works really well is, I'm sure everybody has a wire whisk. You can just take that and just start chopping that butter around until it's going to get incorporated into the flour. So as you could see, I had the butter already done ahead, and I had it in the refrigerator until just before time to do this part of the recipe, because that way it stays really hard, and that's what you want to get that done. All right, so that's looking pretty much like it's supposed to look now. So what I'm going to add to this at this point is a half a teaspoon of vanilla. And again, I splurged on the vanilla. I bought some really upscaled vanilla because this is such a great part of this recipe that I wanted it to be really nice. Now I've got an egg yolk that I'm going to beat. Going to add that in. And then 1/4 cup of pecans. And then I went ahead and got cold water in my measuring cup. And I'm just going to put about 2 tablespoons at a time. And this is where I use my fork to just start to incorporate that until it's just enough that I can squeeze it into a ball. So it's probably going to take about 3 tablespoons. And again, this is something that you can let your young person help you with. They can cut the butter up for you, measure these ingredients, learn how to do the dry measuring part. So I'm going to sit this to the side, because one of the things that you have to do with this is let it sit after you've shaped it into a ball for about an hour. And I've already done that. I've got this done ahead today. So once you've gotten all the dry ingredients incorporated, then you're just going to pat it into a ball, and it looks about like this. So when we come back, I'm going to show you how we're going to roll this out so it's just the right size to go in the pan. And just using this cutting board as my surface, I'm gonna get that started. So when we come back, we're gonna flatten this out. Again, we're gonna use that rolling pin for something other than knocking somebody in the head. So come back with me, we're gonna get this pie crust ready. Alrighty, while we were gone, I got the ball that I was done already made and it's ready to go, and this one can actually go in the refrigerator now for another time. But I want to encourage you when you're making pie crust to go ahead and make two while you're doing it, because that one can freeze and it'll be great for the next time you get ready to do this. But this has been refrigerated for about an hour and it's already in a circle formation. So I want to take my rolling pin and you just want to lightly dust it with flour. And if you'll roll with a nice force, you know, to put some pressure on it and do it kind of in a circular motion, it's going to be in the right shape. And I like to stop about halfway there and just make sure my flour is where it needs to be. Put a little bit more. And isn't this an interesting dough with the pecans in it? That's why I really love this recipe, because it's really showcasing the pecans not only in the pie itself, but also in the crust. These make actually really great little tarts as well. Okay, so let me get my pie plate and see if we've got about the right amount. It looks like it's almost perfect. So I'm going to just get my hands up under here. I'm going to lift it onto the pie pan. I'm going to get rid of this cutting board just a minute so we can see what we're doing here. And you want to make sure that you've got it evenly placed in the pan, and just kind of take the edges and make sure you've got that all the way around really good. And there's several different things that you can do at this point. You can either take a knife and just cut off the pieces that are over the edge. You can take a fork and crimp it all the way around. Or what I like to do is just take my index finger and my thumb and the index finger on the other hand and just kind of make a nice little country crust all the way around the outside. And that really cooks up really nice when you do that. All right, so I might, just for the purpose of showing you, I'm going to take the edge of my fork and get the excess off of that. And then a quicker method is just to crimp the edges. So we'll let this be halfway one way and half the other. All right, now for these delicious pecans. And these are actually some that I had in the freezer, and these things freeze so well. So what you want to do is take the pecans and go around the edges, because this is part of what will show when it comes out of the oven. And this recipe, one of the reasons I love this with the molasses and bourbon, it almost gives it kind of a smoky flavor. It's a little, most people make their pecan pies with Karo syrup, and because I've used molasses in this recipe, it is going to kind of have a little bit, it's going to be just as sticky as it would have been if you'd used the Karo syrup, but that molasses and bourbon is going to give it a really nice smoky flavor. All right, so this is the part that's going to show. And then we want to do about 2 cups. So I'm going to just take my hand and just fill the center of the cavity with the pecans. Just get all that covered up. And now the insides is what is so great. And this is the bourbon and the molasses and the vanilla. I'm going to add to that 4 eggs that I'm going to just beat real quick this fork. We've got melted butter and a cup of sugar. And this is just the thickest, nicest ingredient. So I'm gonna keep getting this mixed up. And when we come back, I'm gonna show you how to get this poured over the pie and then how to make the top look really beautiful with the placement of the pecans. So come back and join me and get that oven on 350. Welcome back. All right, we've got the pie all ready to go. We've got the pecans in it and the bourbon and the molasses. I'm like spinning in here. It's just crazy. And when was the last time you had molasses? You know, we were talking earlier about people used to put that on biscuits, but we're putting it in a pecan pie today, and it's gonna make it very smoky, rich, gooey. It's gonna be awesome. So I've got all of this mixed up we did before the break, and now I'm pouring it slowly into the pie shell so that the ones on the edges will stay right where they're supposed to be. And remember, we put pecans in this pie crust, so it's going to be a little oily when it bakes. So I've got a sheet pan in front of me that I'm going to put on it before we put it in the oven. Now this is where you kind of cheat a little bit, and you take some of the whole pecans and decorate so that what shows when it comes out of the oven looks really good on the top. So just put a few of these, and it's just going to bake up. And when it bakes, it's going to take about 50 minutes to an hour at 350. And you want to make sure that the edges are nice and firm and that at the middle may still be a little shaky. All right, that's ready to go in a 350-degree oven for 50 minutes to an hour. All right, so let me walk past the stove where I've got some heavy cream that's going to come to a boil while we put together this chocolate peanut butter pie. And I've already got my chocolate wafers in the food processor. And you know, I was really interested at the Fresh Market. They've got their own brand of chocolate wafers now. And it reminds me of when I was a little girl and my mother always shopped at the A&P. And if the A&P had a brand, she always bought it. So that's the way I feel about my partner, Fresh Market. So I'm gonna put the chocolate crumbs in a bowl. I've got 2 tablespoons of sugar in there, and now 4 tablespoons of melted butter. And we're just going to mix that together with a spoon. And I've got another 9-inch pie pan that, again, I think a homemade crust just makes this complete. We want to just get this nice and moistened and into the pie shell. And you see, it's just not that hard to do, and you can do it yourself. So just take that same spoon and evenly distribute the crumbs around, and then take the back of the spoon and press the sides up. And this will go in that same 350-degree oven for about 8 to 10 minutes to get good and firm. So I'll be putting that in the oven in just a second. But in the meantime, as you can see, my heavy cream is boiling. And this is going to be for the ganache that is going to go in this. So what we're going to do is add this heavy cream that I've let come to a boil to my semi-sweet chocolate chips. And this is how we're going to make the ganache. And this just will stir up, and it will just be really, really nice. And this is going to go in the center of this crust before we put the peanut butter filling. So come back with me after the break. I'll get the steps of this going, and we're going to have some wonderful chocolate and pecan pies to look forward to. Have you ever been to your favorite restaurant with a group of friends and everyone is not served at the same time? I always wonder what to do in that situation. There's a couple of ways you can handle it. The first thing would be for the 2 people maybe that did not get served right away to say to the other guests, everybody go ahead, eat while it's hot. If that's not appropriate, The next best thing to do would be to ask the waiter or waitress, how much longer do you think it'll be before our meal is served? And certainly do it in a nice way. That prompts the other people at the table to know whether or not they should begin eating or not. When you're with a group of friends, the best thing to do at the table is to keep it away from religion or politics, keep the conversation very light and upbeat, and remember, if you do have great service, be sure to leave a really nice gratuity for your waiter. Welcome back, and everything in this kitchen is just amazing right now. From the way Three Monkeys is decorated today, I just love the blue and the yellow. It just kind of introduces spring, although it's just right around the corner. And then these pies are just amazing. And as we went to the break, I had started the ganache. The crust came out of the oven. I've poured the ganache that we did with the semi-sweet chocolate and cream in the pan. And now I'm going to do the filling, which is Jiffy crunchy peanut butter, cream cheese, sweetened condensed milk, and then some vanilla extract. So I'm just going to mix that up, and I've let everything come to room temperature so that it'll mix well. But again, if you don't like the peanuts in it, chunky, you can do just the creamy peanut butter, but I just happen to like the crunchy. So I'm using that in this today. And you know, I start my day with 2 tablespoons of peanut butter on a piece of raisin toast every single day. So this aroma is very familiar to me. All right, so that's nice and creamed up. And then I have got whipped cream that I'm gonna add to this. And I wanted to give you a tip when it comes to making your own whipped cream. When you buy the heavy cream at the store, just put the bowl in the freezer and it'll make the process go a lot faster. So I went ahead and whipped up the heavy cream, and this is a cup. And we're gonna now fold this into the mixture. And the folding process is just a matter of going in circles where you're incorporating down to the bottom of the bowl, and then you're just kind of a nice wrist motion, just whipping and incorporating it very lightly so that it kind of maintains the fluffiness of the cream cheese. And I really like to keep mine more or less of a marbled effect. So just enough to get it basically incorporated. And then we're going to pour this on top of the ganache layer. So when you get ready to slice this, you're going to be able to see a nice differentiation between this layer and the layer of ganache. And there's nothing better to me than the combination of the two, peanut butter and chocolate. All right, so I'm just gonna whip this around. And I actually got one done ahead of time so that I could show you the final process. So this one is complete. It's been back in the refrigerator and has gotten firm again. And now the other cup of cream I whipped, and I've added to that a teaspoon of vanilla. And now this is going to be the topping. So you can either spread it on, or you could whip it a lot firmer than this and pipe it on the top. But the garnish is going to be so attractive on here that it's really not necessary to do the whole piping process. So I'm just going to basically ice the top with the whipped cream. Then I saved back 2 tablespoons of the ganache, and I've let that sit down in some warm water to stay kind of pliable. And I'm going to take some peanuts whole, and these are actually those wonderful Virginia salted peanuts that I just love. I'm going to put those on top. All right, and then I'm just going to drizzle some of the ganache just with my spoon, just kind of randomly go across, getting a little bit on the cutting board that I can use my finger with in a few minutes. But this just makes such a pretty pie. And a little bit of this goes quite a long way. So, like I said, let dessert be the star of the show. and don't worry about how big the slice is. So as you can see, we've got a wonderful pecan pie, nice and juicy, nice and thick, a beautiful peanut butter pie. So try these recipes as we enter into spring. Just make the star of the show the dessert. A little bitty slice won't hurt you. So just hope you'll try these recipes. They're really delicious, wonderful. And just remember, whatever you do, do it in good taste. And join me back here next Saturday night at 6 o'clock.